Okay, we're being recorded. Welcome everyone to our Pure Presence Book Club. Following the book, Being Aware of Being Aware. Love this book. Just freaking amazing this book is. And I have an awesome guest. I met Jiffy at the Garrison Institute probably 3 or 4 years ago. And then I saw her again last year at Garrison. She is a regular, as much as she can go. She follows Rupert over at the Garrison Institute. How many times have you been over there, Jiffy?
I think 5.
5 times, yeah. So she's, you're not really a Rupert junkie. You just go get plugged into Rupert and your community. And Jiffy, is what seems to happen is we sort of find out who the course teachers are, or somebody says, oh, well, so-and-so's a course teacher, or so-and-so follows Muji, or somebody follows somebody else, and you kind of connect with different beings. And I connected with Jiffy the first time I went with Lisa, and got to know who she was. And then the last time got to know more about who she is. And then I went to a course group of hers she lives about 70 miles from me. I live in Maine. She lives in Massachusetts, and just wanted to. I've wanted to have you on the book club for a long time, and this is the first time that I've had a chance to do it. And I'm just very happy to have your input, your take on the teaching of Rupert is what we focus on. We try not to we don't bring the course into this venue on purpose, because most of the guys and gals that are here, they love and follow Rupert. So I don't mix up the teaching intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that really fits better, because people that want to know about what I'm doing on the Course in Miracles, they know where to find me in different areas of availability. And the thing that really called me to want to bring you on the show is, of course, it's your love for Rupert, but it's also because you're also coming from a similar connectedness to the Course, which is where I come from. So I wanted to bring that influence in here, even though we're not going to be talking about the Course. And so for you guys that haven't met Jiffy before, this is Jiffy Read. And as she said before many of you came on, she is a retired horse trainer, and she leads a course group in her home down in Massachusetts. And she is also going for a degree. Is it a master's degree in psychology?
Yep.
So that she is going to start another career as a therapist. So
bringing the non-dual understanding into that arena.
Nice. That is so powerful. And so that will be effective. That actually will have an impact in the background of experience, which changes. It doesn't change the behavior. It changes the system of understanding and belief, so that the behavior changes as a result.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, everyone, please give a warm welcome to Jiffy Read. And this week we're looking at chapter 5 in Rupert's book, the title, The Effortless Path. The Effortless Path. And this is, I think, this title says everything, because you really have to keep your attention on not efforting in order to relax into the being, or relax into the not efforting.
I like to say it's more that I have to notice where I am efforting, so that I can simply notice it, and then to the extent that I'm willing to let that efforting go, then it relaxes on its own.
Yes. It's funny. It's in the very end of this chapter, Rupert talks about it's almost like a mind twister statement where he talks about there's only one effort that's helpful. The effort to let go of efforting or something.
Right.
That's, we'll get to that at the end of the chapter, but he brings a kind of a mind twist to that statement. Yeah.
I remember at the beginning of my journey and just how much effort I put into letting go of effort. But that was really necessary. Like, I didn't realize I was struggling against the effort, as I think a lot of people do. And I kept coming up against, stop efforting. But I didn't know how to do that. But I can see that putting all that effort, doing all that struggle against the efforting really helped me to see where I was efforting. So it served a purpose. So, I get the sense that a lot of times people get very frustrated when they come up against that teaching, it's effortless, just give up effort. But the mind has to go through that struggle to come up against itself, to then be able to identify or to have it become so apparent where that efforting is actually happening. So
Yeah.
I want to put that out there because I've been a spiritual guide for people who are going through awakening experiences, and so I've sort of companioned people as they're going through the process. And I know that people can get very self-critical about when they're efforting, but you know what? It's all part of the process. We all have our own process we go through, and that effort to get to know effort is oftentimes a very necessary part for people.
Yes. I I find it kind of interesting in that we tend to want to protect psychologically. We tend to try to protect our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So we find resistance, or we find a pushback when someone uses words that don't agree with our choice of words. And it's interesting when you find really fundamental course students or fundamental non-dual direct path students. If you say a word that points to doing, you right away you'll get someone that say, "Oh, don't, it's not that, it's this."
Yeah.
Or if you get someone that says something that's not 100% fundamentalist to the course, they'll say, no, it's not this, it's this.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time with on this journey. We find teachers that are, and I'm one of them, that will correct or try to rephrase something that someone said in my terms because it fits better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting how that happens?
It is. I find also, though, I've actually come from three sort of directions. So before Course in Miracles, I had a stint in the Zen philosophy, which was really good because I found that to be so clear and direct in its own way, but it really allowed me to depersonalize things, to sort of take out the personal element of this whole spiritual thing and of doing. And so I find myself still drawing on all three of those traditions or all three of those approaches, depending on what's happening with me, depending on what's happening with someone who is, maybe seeking some guidance from me. I'm glad I didn't have one tradition that I stuck with. And I think it's helpful to get really established in one tradition, but also be open to other traditions. Because you're right, we can become very dogmatic and very stuck in one particular approach and not see that we're stuck and that we're not seeing a bigger picture.
Right. I was trying to get us to go live on Facebook, and for some reason, it's not permitting me to do that. I'm going to try one more time to do it and see if it says yes. No, it's saying, sorry, this feature isn't available right now. An error occurred while processing the request. So for you guys that are on Facebook, I'm going to upload the video for you later. In the meantime, we'll just continue with our talk. And today we're talking to Jiffy Read on Chapter 5, The Effortless Path. And why don't we get into the content of the chapter, Jiffy, and what is it? What are your favorite parts? Do you have some favorite pages on this that you would like to share from? We also have some comments in the chat that we can pull from whenever you're ready.
You know, I don't have a favorite part because every time I read it, something else jumps out. So I read this again last night, and you know, it's always different because I'm always different when I come to a reading. So no, I'm sorry, I don't have a favorite part to share. Just looking through it now, it's just all comes back down to we are already always awareness. There's nothing to do. But you know, I was thinking about this morning, and I find that one thing that people really struggle with is, well, how do I find it? How do I hold on to it? And as Rupert says, it's not an object. It's not something, and he says this, you know, throughout this chapter, it's not something that can be found. It's not something that is separate from the subject. And one thing I discovered when I was starting to come into more awareness of awareness, being aware of being aware, was that I couldn't, you know, obviously I couldn't access it by deciding I was going to access it. No, let me start in a different way. I would have moments where I'd say, "Oh wow, I was there." Like I had given up whatever the you know, the being out of awareness, being drawn into phenomena of the world, and I'd sort of go, "Oh, I was just resting in awareness there." So afterwards, I'd come to recognize that I'd been resting in awareness. And then as I started to identify those moments, and those moments started to become longer times, and I come out and go, wow, you know, on that walk, I was effortless awareness for the duration of that walk. And then I just sort of reflect on it and realize I am already there. It's me who makes the effort away from that. So I don't have to do anything to get there. And as I become aware of those moments afterwards, they start to grow, because that part of me that wants to, you know, that's seeking that, settles down, because it starts to understand, oh, it's right there. I don't have to effort. So I kind of went in the back door to awareness, not trying any practice to be aware of being aware, but just the opposite, just making note of when I was standing as awareness. And somehow from there, that whole tension, that whole movement, that activity that comes up around wanting to, you know, seek awareness, just naturally kind of, you know, undid itself.
I like the way you described that. I was tracking with you when you were describing it that way, and that feels very organic. Mm-hmm. And another way of explaining how awareness actually reveals itself.
Mm. And I would go so far as to say that awareness doesn't even reveal itself. It's that awareness is there revealed all the time anyway. But when my mind would come back online and awareness would seem to be veiled, my mind, you know, was not quite yet really invested in the world of form. And so there was just enough there to sort of say, oh, I was in that place. I was in that place. And then, of course, the business of the world would come up, and, I'd have to take care of whatever I had to take care of. But there'd be that not yet solidified activity of the mind, that would leave me with just enough of a sort of getting that, awareness is right there. It's always there. And now my mind is taking me somewhere else. And oftentimes my mind has to take me somewhere else because I need to balance the checkbook, or I need to, feed the dog, or whatever. But as I started to recognize those moments and to really let myself acknowledge them, they just became more and more frequent. And then I could sort of willingly say, now it's time to go into the world of form and do what needs to be done in the world of form. And then what started to happen was there was this simultaneous experience of being aware, so that awareness wasn't being veiled. It was right there along with the mind being active in the world of form.
Yeah. It's like you just, this is what I was talking about a few minutes ago, where we have a particular way of understanding the describing of the experience, where I said that awareness reveals itself, and then you said, well, I wouldn't really say it that way. And that's kind of like what Rupert does when he says, and even that is he'll use a paragraph or a sentence, and he'll say, well, and even that is a concession, because that's not even, you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting how those things sort of show up in trying to explain an experience of where words just
fail.
Yeah, they go so far, and then words are not words, that they are the veil.
They are the veil, and they're so inadequate. And by the way, when you said what you did, I know that you know exactly, I got what you were talking about. Like Rupert, I love words, and I love their ability to get just so close. So I wanted to refine that just a little bit, even though
I know. I appreciate that. Jenny Beal does the same thing. She just goes shoop.
Yeah.
And she just like Rupert, she refines it just a little bit, just enough to because there is a subtlety to the language that we use that isn't it just is a little bit shy
Mm-hmm.
of precise.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's talking about something that's always there, but seems to not be known or seems to not be noticed.
It's so hard to talk about.
There's a couple of questions here. Titania has, awareness is too close to itself to know itself in subject-object relationship. I love that. Is it like God in Course in Miracles does not know about the world and separated selves? I'd have to agree with that as a kind of like.
It's a kind of like, the Course puts a different frame on the one thing, on awareness. But yes, I like what you say. It's kind of like, there's no direct one-to-one correspondence between non-duality and A Course in Miracles, but they're different ways of exploring the one principle.
Right.
Is the
Well,
best
for
way.
me, awareness is God,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the interchangeable. You could say that's the closest I can come to say when I read about God or Holy Spirit or Jesus in the Course. If I just put awareness in its place, I'm right there.
Mhm. So this is why I like having the Zen part too. And like I said, I came in from Zen to the Course in Miracles. Um, and Zen, Zen has this wonderful, not Zen, the Tao has this wonderful, um, you know, I can't remember what you call the different sections of it, but it starts out, from the Tao comes the one, from the one comes the two, from the two comes the three, and from the three come all things. And what I like about that in talking about this right here is that from the Tao is what Rupert would call pure awareness. So it's awareness before there's any sense of subject object. So from the Tao, from the full emptiness, empty fullness, comes the one. And the one, in terms of, if I were to speak in non-duality, would be the concept of the I thought. It doesn't even have to be yet the I thought, just the concept, just the beginning inkling of there being a subject. From the one comes the two. Once you have the I thought, you have the not I, you know, the not me thought that comes into being. So now you've got the beginning of the subject object. And then my interpretation of from the two comes the three is now you've got subject object, and now as the third element you've got space time. And from the three come all things. So once you've got subject, once you've got object, and once you've got space time, then come all things. But the fundamental, the part it all comes out of is the Tao, which is prior to any sort of I. And for me, when I'm meditating and I'm resting in awareness, that I thought comes in and out. So I sort of see that as there's a big sort of overlap there between just pure awareness with no thought and then the beginning of thought. So when I think of God for myself, and this is tricky because see, now I'm getting into definitions and now we're kind of laying down something that becomes more solid, and that's always dangerous because then, you know, we can sort of get dogmatic about things. For me, I like to keep some personal element in God, whereas for me, the Tao is completely impersonal. So here's how I get to use the three different teachings in a way that each enables me to kind of unhook from elements of the other teachings. So I don't know if that makes sense, if I'm articulating that. So I don't equate God with awareness, but I'm more likely to go to the teaching of the Tao for that, so that I can feel the completely unhooked, prior to mind thing out of which all arises. And then with the I thought, with the beginning of the I thought, for me is where God comes into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that makes sense because God has a name. So as soon as you give something a name, you've brought you've put a label on what can't be labeled. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you. We have a couple of other questions on the board. It says, what does Rupert want to say in the second paragraph on page 61? It says, in fact, all relative knowledge and experience are derived from and are a refraction of this single, non-dual absolute knowledge, just as the apparent multiplicity and diversity of the objects and people in a night dream are refractions of a single, indivisible mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what does Rupert want to say? What is that saying?
I could venture into quantum physics here, although I'm not a quantum physicist, but it can be helpful for me to think about it in a scientific way as I then go into the sort of non-dual explanation, just to try and give it another twist. But, you know, awareness is pure possibility. The Tao is pure possibility. prior to all things, and yet all things are made of that. All things do not have a separate existence. They are all made, in Rupert's terms, they're all made of consciousness, or they're all made of awareness. In Taoist terms, they're all made, they all come out of the Tao. They're all arisings in the Tao. In terms of dreams, which Rupert's talking about, when we dream at night, we dream up a world, and that world doesn't have an outside existence that's made of matter. That world is contained within our mind. It is made of our mind. And what's helpful in thinking about something like this is to let go of the idea of matter, because I know when I was trying to make this shift, I was always trying to reconcile, well, how does matter come out of that? And when I realized, oh my God, it's all mind. It's all, and being all mind, it's actually all awareness. And mind is the agency through which a phenomenon known as matter can be known. But it's all awareness. It's all an appearance in awareness. Matter has no materialism of its own. So the dream, the dream model is I think the most helpful here, because we all have the experience of dreaming up a world and imagining we're in it and experiencing that world, and experiencing bumping into things or flying through the air or seeing things, feeling fright. But all it's made of is mind. And then to go one step even further back, all it's made of is mind, but what knows it is awareness. Awareness is the knowing that knows what arises to be known.
Yes. Yeah. I thought you explained that very well. I hope that was a good answer for you, Titania. Thank you for the question. And we have another question from, I'm going to skip past some of your questions, Titania, and move to Tambra. There's a question that she has. If there is time, can we talk about the first paragraph? If there is time, can we talk about the first paragraph on page 47? Awareness seems to cease knowing itself as it truly is when it loses itself in objective experience. How can awareness lose itself?
So awareness that is not focused on an object, unfocused awareness knows itself. And we know this from direct experience. If I were to be asked a question, if someone asked me, are you aware? I would think about it for a moment and I'd say, yes, I am aware. But the funny thing is, I'm not really thinking about it. When you, and any of us can do this for ourselves. Think about what happens when you ask yourself the question, am I aware? You don't reason out the answer. There's nothing there to reason. We go directly to the experience of being aware and knowing ourselves as awareness, not as something we can find as an object, but just as the experience. Oh, I'm aware. I am aware. And there's a very subtle feeling related to that, feeling and experience related to that. But as we become focused on objects, and they don't have to be objects in the outside world, they can be thoughts, they can be feelings, so they can be an internal experience. That awareness that returned to its own experience of its own being, with the question, am I aware? Because that question, am I aware, naturally draws us back to to awareness. But when we then take that and bring it forward to attend to something, whether it's a thought, a feeling, or a perception, something in the quote unquote outside world, awareness then rises up as attention and as mind, and reaches out to then create this split where where a subject is required to then know the object. And so awareness at that point seems to lose itself, but it hasn't. Really what's happened is mind has arisen to then create the experience of there being an object that can be known by a subject. One of the things that's challenging is that language usage in this is so similar to how we use these terms in the regular world. And I'm coming up against this, being in school for psychology, we use the term mind and we use the term consciousness, but in really different ways, in ways that we're socialized, that we're taught. And so when we come to non-duality, we have to learn different definitions for those words. So consciousness in, let's just say, the sort of normal, the relative world. Consciousness in the relative world usually refers to being mentally engaged, mentally online.
Yeah, true.
With non-duality, it's consciousness is the state prior to mind.
Yes.
Mind and consciousness are used pretty much synonymously in the, the relative world, but in non-duality, mind is an activity that arises out of consciousness and then allows experience to be experienced, allows a world to be known. So it's not synonymous with consciousness. It's an activity of consciousness. So just that to lay a groundwork, because I struggled with that a lot. The different definitions, and sometimes they're so close. Yeah, and it's interesting when you learn about consciousness studies, how they haven't really come up with a definition for consciousness, which is kind of funny because we're talking about a pretty basic thing here, but the different explorers and philosophers and scientists of consciousness have not sort of gotten together and say, okay, let's define this thing. And one thing I really appreciate about non-duality is that it has very clearly defined what these things are, what these movements or principles are. And once that is understood and really internalized, then what Rupert says just comes into focus with such clarity.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a masterful job of explaining that for Tambra. Thank you for the way you explained it. And when I think of consciousness relative to the world, we did a book study a couple of books back, one of Rupert's books, and he talks about the world's model of consciousness starts out with a belief, using a belief system that this is true and real and everything. I forget what he calls that, but Rupert has a name for it, and it's called poly something. I did an interview with Freedom Cartwright, and she just really nailed it when we talked about this. But it talks about the relative world view of consciousness comes from starting to say, okay, then we're going to start out knowing that this is real and true, and we're going to see everything from here.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of an in-between state that the world of consciousness studies is exploring right now. So the original model was, there is a physical world, there's a physical universe, there's a physical galaxy, there's a physical solar system, we're on this planet, and we are animals, creatures, what have you, on this planet, and in our bodies we have these brains, and in our brains they're sort of like these biological computers. They are biological computers from the point of view of this model. And within those biological brains, activity happens and gives rise to consciousness. So that's sort of the traditional model. I wish I could remember that word, Bill, that you're trying to remember. I'm having trouble with it too. Anyway, it'll probably...
Someone will probably type it in. We have like 16 messages that are building on the board here.
Panpsychism, thank you. Yes, panpsychism. Okay, so we're going to skip over panpsychism and we're going to go to the non-duality model, and then we're going to come back and we're going to bridge the two.
Right. It wasn't poly, it was pan, right? Panpsychism. Thank you for that.
So now the non-duality point of view is that there is consciousness. That's the primary substrate out of which everything arises. From consciousness arises a mind. From the mind arises the world of form. So that everything is contained within consciousness, is made of consciousness, and is known by consciousness. So those are the two sort of opposite ways of looking at it. Panpsychism started over here. It is really trying to get over to non-duality. It is doing its best without letting go of the material world. I mean, it's so good. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, there's a material world and there's consciousness, and all material is conscious. So they're really trying, but they're going to end up in a cul-de-sac, and they're already in a cul-de-sac, and they're trying really hard to get out of that cul-de-sac, but it ain't going to work. They're going to have to come over to the non-duality world. but bless their little hearts, they're really trying hard. Yeah. And thank God they're trying. You'll get there. So anyway, those are the three places.
We have a comment from Morris. He says, hi, this is Morris. Of particular interest, I found the 7th paragraph from the beginning significant for me. It begins, in order for any knowledge. I have an ebook, so I don't know what page it is on in the hard copy. Okay, it's on page 60. William Price says it's on page 60. So on page 60, it begins with, in order for any knowledge or experience to be known, a knowing subject must stand apart from the known object, other, or world. Attention is the distance between the subject and the object. As such, the subject-object relationship is the means by which all conventional knowledge and experience are known. Mm. And not sure you have, okay, so you found that of interest. Did you have a question about it, Morris? Yeah, because that's kind of what Jiffy was saying just now when she was using that example and you said it so well that consciousness knows itself by itself, and from itself is how did you say it again? You said it just like Rupert said it.
I can't remember, but Morris is saying he thinks it was answered, but I will clarify. So again, here's the consciousness only model, starting out from the understanding that everything is consciousness, and consciousness in its pure form, or awareness in its pure form, or the Tao, or however you want to term it, does not is just pure potential. And here again, we're sort of overlapping into quantum physics. Is just pure potential without any objects, without a subject to know an object, without the appearance of form. From this pure potential, in order for there to then be, in order for a world of form, or in order for experience to come into being, something has to happen in that pure potential, because right now it's just pure potential. And what happens is, in order for a world to be experienced, that pure potential has to start to coalesce around an idea. And from that, within that awareness, this is so hard. Within that, there's a coalescing around that idea, and as there's a coalescing around that idea, there's the idea itself starts to become more solid. But as it does, it stands apart. It seems to stand apart from that field of pure potential, because now that you've got something where before you had the potential for all things, it's going to stand apart. Attention is the means that awareness has at its disposal to follow that, to be able to focus in on that object as it's coming into form. And that's why Rupert starts out the chapter by talking about how attention comes from the Latin tendere, which is to stand apart, to stand out. So attention is the means by which an object that's coming into form or has come into form can then be known by the subject, which co-arises with the object. This is all very abstract.
Okay, let's stay with that for just a minute, because that brings up, this is a perfect segue to be able to ask you, as a psychologist, or in the psychology of this looking, this experience of seeing from right there, the way you describe that, how is it that awareness becomes the knowing, or when Rupert says that we take our stand in the truth, or take our stand as the pure awareness, how is it that that awareness refracts itself and then gathers itself again to know itself while it's having the refracted experience of um, of of um, of of refraction?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
How does that work, or how can we?
How does that, we go from a subject object, and and then the way you just so clearly explained it, where the pure potential refracts itself, or it gives attention to this object to make the object to have the appearance, or the seeming appearance of the object, and then also remains to know itself all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Um, so I'm going to answer the question, and I'm not sure I'm going to answer your question, but it seems important for me to answer it in this way. So when that happens, that the object comes into apparent being and attention goes to that object, and we seem to lose awareness of being awareness. That's we're not taught that we're still standing as awareness, that we've never lost our place in awareness, and we get lost in, we merge with experience. But that's just because the model that we've grown up with of being a mind in a world, we lose ourselves like that, because it was never taught to us that, no, we're actually awareness. We have never stopped being awareness. And this is an appearance in the mind that we can focus on really closely, where we do lose a sense of being awareness. You know, we've sort of let go of being aware, and gotten really like into the, you know, sort of nitty gritty of experiencing this, engaging with it, whatever. But all it takes is a moment to go, oh, but I'm still awareness, to just sort of break away from that a little bit and go, yeah, I'm still here.
Yes.
And I'm engaged with this apparent, object, but I'm still here.
Yes.
So there's a way to maintain both at the same time. And, you know, there's a time and a place to just go all the way in here, and
Mm-hmm.
also a time and a place to back off and just come back to rest as awareness.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I like the way you explain things. I like the way you explained that. And Rupert also did give a reference to it, and Titania mentions here that mind is the activity through which awareness knows objective experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she says how much and what it knows. In my mind, how much and what it knows those are two separate kinds of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
The knowing that is asking the question is talking about knowing the sub or the object of experience, and the knowing that that mind rises in just knows.
Right. Is just the knowing without knowing something. So mind
Right.
is what knows something, and awareness is what is the knowing.
Right. Because when you know something, you've given your attention to the object of experience.
And it's mind that is the agency through which it then is known as a concept, as something that's labeled, something that has a relationship to other things.
Yes. Yes. The Tambra said, Jiffy, you are the bomb at explaining this. You are the bomb, man.
Well, this is fun. And Bill, you and I think we play well off each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having fun. This is great. And you can do that so well. You can actually do that better with this particular book. You can do it better with this one than you can with the essays. This is more of a teaching, a direct teaching, where the essays are more of an explanation given to a question.
I would agree. And that's one of the things I love about this particular book, is that it just goes right to it. But I can imagine that if you're new to non-duality, it would be a little tough. So I do love the essays. I really love the essays, and I keep giving that book away to people who have no idea what non-duality is. And I say, here, read this, especially his book on consciousness, Essays on the Nature of Mind and Matter, I think it's called.
Yeah.
The Nature of Consciousness. I love that book, but yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, that's much more of an educational background book.
Yeah. It took me a little while to figure that out, but we did that. That was the first book we did. We've done every one of his books so far. I mean, I think this is the last one, until you get into his volumes that come with CDs.
Mm-hmm. The meditation.
And I think he's working on another book. I think there's another book coming, and maybe it's going to show up in Mercy next week.
Ooh, I'll have to find out if it does. Yeah, I remember him saying that this is sort of the first of a series, that he's taking just little snippets. His plan is to do a whole bunch of these books where each one has a different focus, and there's snippets of meditations that are really very direct. So they're sort of contemplations in and of their own right. Very direct contemplations, really to the heart of the matter. So I'm looking forward to whatever comes out next.
Yeah, me too. Well, he's a young guy. He's going to be around for a while, and he has a growing audience.
Yes, he does. And I think it's his birthday today. So he is a young guy, but today he's 1 year older.
Oh, good. Yeah, I don't know how old he is. I think is he 58 or something? 57?
He's my age. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Young guy.
Young guy. Thank you.
Whatever. I like the bit on page 63 in this, where he talks about meditation, because often we try to have an experience in meditation, and meditation is, the way Rupert describes it, says meditation is the relaxation of the tension in attention and the subsequent return of awareness to itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just what you were saying. It's that meditation is that momentary pause, that where awareness is, and I'm not going to say revealed, it's remembered. Its awareness is relaxed enough to where the natural state is attention is given back to the natural state.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And one of the things I just want to point out is that in a formal meditation practice, that attention does not always return away from objects to rest in awareness. We can have a lot going on in our minds during meditation and just not get back to that state. And I'm, I know there's a danger with language here. What I'm trying to say is, whatever happens in meditation, that's what's happening in meditation. It's so restful, and it's just nice to touch base with that. And when that happens in the course of a meditation session, that's wonderful. If it doesn't happen, just be aware of being aware of whatever's coming up. And that in itself is enough to just bring us back, and maybe not to rest in awareness, not that we're never not resting in awareness. But if we're in an agitated state, just to recognize I'm in an agitated state, and I'm aware that I'm in an agitated state, that takes us back a little bit, and that can help to just relax the mind a little bit. And maybe it'll relax more, maybe it won't. But there's no goal in meditation to rest as awareness. Resting as awareness happens anyway. And it's as we play with this and have fun with this, and I do encourage people to have fun with it, because my God, this is us. These are our minds and our experience. It starts to become more familiar. And I know that when I have a lot going on and there's just, life seems overwhelming, I can get back to that place of awareness. And it doesn't mean that life stops being overwhelming. It doesn't mean that I'm not having the sensations and the feelings and the thoughts that come with being overwhelmed. But that simultaneously, I'm also very deeply in touch with being aware of being aware. And that's grounding, because now I'm not lost in the world of form and lost in feeling, sensations, thoughts. I'm here having that experience. And in doing that, there's this, there's a joy that comes up. Even when things are really tough, there's a sense of, I'm really alive in this. And my experience is that the first sort of movement of awareness is that sense of liveliness, that enlivening. And so when I can become aware of being aware in the midst of a lot of stuff going on, I touch base with that liveliness again. And it just changes. It doesn't change the experience, but it changes the relationship with the experience in a way that is really profound.
I totally, I agree with that. And I'm finding in my own experience that getting back in touch with myself as just pausing and awareness when the activity seems busy and the mind is really there's a extreme focus on the attention of the object of experience, and that relaxing, really what I'm noticing for me is that relaxing moment, even if it's momentary, could be for 5 seconds, could be for a minute. What happens is it seems like the intelligence of awareness actually infuses the experience. So the experience actually might change. The experience might be altered by being relaxed into the because I feel that awareness has an intelligence that comes with it if you rely, or if you relax into it. That's sort of relying or allowing the fullness of that the embodiment of awareness to infuse the mind that was the thinking experience, and that can change the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about how awareness then infuses the mind, because the more mind gets lost in the world of form, the more it loses its connection with that that intelligence, that unitive intelligence, and it starts to go to disunitive intelligence, and that's where you start to get repetitive thoughts or knee-jerk reactions can come into play. But to the extent that we're able to come to find that anchor in awareness is the extent to which we unhook ourselves from is the extent to which the mind backs off from those repetitive, reactive, knee-jerk reactions, and intelligence, that unitive intelligence, can inform the mind and then our actions.
Yeah, yeah, and that happens, and for me, that's like that. I mean, some would call it intuitive, some would call it other different different things. It's not an entity. It's it's a natural informing
Mm-hmm.
that we relax into and allow it to allow it to have the space that includes all things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a power that we all have. It's the power of stillness, really,
Yep.
that is available to all beings. And I don't think I don't think it excludes the animal kingdom. I think everything is included in that.
I will tell you, working with horses, and towards the end of my career, I was a horse whisperer. So I was working with, for the most part, traumatized horses, horses that other trainers didn't want to work with because they were dangerous. And yeah, that same capacity is in animals. I mean, how can it not be? Humans are not separate.
Right.
We are all the same thing, just different expressions of awareness.
Yes, yes. I love Jenny. Jenny, thank you for being with us all the time here in our book club live broadcast, and also the comments and the YouTubes that you put in the Pure Presence Facebook group. So thank you for your participation in that. It's very helpful for so many. And Jenny said that objects only exist in relation to a subject without attention. There are no objects. All possibilities are present in consciousness. You can think of it as a vibration creating patterns or arising in accordance with patterns. So to Tanya, she's talking to a question that Tanya had. So to Tanya, what any one mind experiences knows, and the amount any mind experiences knows, is governed by those patterns which you could think of as being the laws of the universe. Yes. Thank you. And that's sort of what the intelligence is. It's the laws of the universe. They're natural, they happen. They're not chosen. It's just the natural laws of the universe that are they are in the background of awareness, and I guess that would be that's what gives us the understanding of knowing. There's a knowing, there's a known, or there's a known, there's a knowing, and that is an intelligence that is the intelligence of being, I guess.
So I didn't quite track that question, I don't think, but I do want to say that the laws of the universe, and Rupert was the one who taught me this, the laws of the universe are the laws of the mind. And those laws are fixed to the extent that the mind has fixed them. But the laws of awareness are really the laws of unity. So awareness is always seeking to unify, and it's the mind that seeks to divide and separate out, and that's what it has to do in order to know a world. But also along the ways of the way of dividing and separating out, it looks for patterns and certain patterns that recur because it's seen that before. It then solidifies and makes into a law. So
I think you're saying the same thing, because Jenny was speaking to Tanya's point that said mind is the activity through which awareness knows objective experience, and then Jenny was giving an explanation of
okay,
that.
great.
So you're tracking on the same exact thing. So
Wasn't sure I was.
yeah, thank you both. And William Price said something I've heard Rupert say so many times in his talks, where he says, Rupert Spira quotes Rumi, "Flow down and down and down in ever widening rings of being. It is a sinking of the attention into its source."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, William Price. We have all heard Rupert use that term. And James Clayton says, Arthur likes to say that awareness steps forward more frequently, sneaking in the back door, as Jiffy explained earlier. Yeah, I did like your explanation of your sort of your backdoor way of noticing awareness from the point of the from the point of the experience.
Yeah.
Very, very clear, and it makes it very like understandable quickly.
And also accessible. It's like, oh, I have that experience, because I found that a lot of people were thinking they weren't having that experience. And once I help them identify that, we all have those times. Well, for instance, how many of us have gotten into a car and hit the road, hit the highway for, a few hours of driving, and then we get to our destination, we're like, wow, where did the time go? And the fact is, for a lot of that drive, we were resting as awareness, with just enough mind coming up to go through the process of driving. But we were resting as awareness without being aware of that.
Yes.
So rather than struggling to have this experience of just resting as awareness, I just found it so much more helpful to identify, oh, I've had that experience. I have that experience regularly.
Yes.
Not regularly sometimes, but other times quite regularly. And that just cleared the way for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. There's kind of a clarity comment here that Jenny is giving. Laws of the universe are the patterns through which any kind of mind, human, animal, etc. There are no laws of consciousness. Consciousness is one. Only in its vibration can patterns arise.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well put. Really well put.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we've come to the end of our talk today. Jiffy Read, I would love to have you back for another time. We're going to complete this book sometime in April, but I have another book in mind, and you were a great co-host for everyone. I agree that you are the bomb, and I'd loved having you on the show today. Thank you for being with us.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining with us. I'll see you next week. Next week we'll have Beatrice, and then we're going to skip a week while I'm at the Mercy Center on retreat on the 27th. We're going to skip that day. But I'll see everyone next week with Beatrice, and we're looking forward to sharing with her for the first time. Thanks again, Jiffy, and everyone for being with us. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.